Shalom Shevarin, and welcome to Lesson 3 from Chapter 2 and Part 2. This is a study of the second of the seven churches, the Church of Smyrna. Smyrna means crushed, and it comes from the same root word as myrrh, an embalming spice that releases its aroma when crushed. Smyrna represents the 2nd and 3rd century church that suffered intense persecution. The title: These are the words of Him who is the first and the last, the Alpha and the Omega, and the Aleph Tau in Hebrew, who died and came to life again. The emphasis of the title is obvious. It has to do with overcoming death. The commendation: I know your afflictions and your poverty, yet you are rich. I know the slander of those who say they are Jews and are not, but are a synagogue of Satan. Brothers and sisters, the first noted person to be persecuted in the church of Smyrna is recorded in history. But these persecutions came from the Jews, not from the Romans. Polycarp was the most famous of the early martyrs and was the bishop of Smyrna. And tragically, he was burned at the stake at the age of 86 because he stood for Christ. The Romans took Caesar worship very seriously, as they identified this act as one of loyalty to the empire and its ruler. Therefore, once a year, all citizens had to burn incense in a temple or one in a courtyard where there was a statue of Caesar. Once this was done, an official who sat nearby issued a certificate of the empire which entitled the holder to trade freely. This practice has once again emerged and is emerging. It has to do with the future mark of the beast of Revelation 13:6. I do not want to sound like a prophet of doom, but my research into COVID-19 and how it has been used to transform the way people think, especially via governments, as they attempt mass vaccinations taking place across the globe, have already caused many governments to issue a passport or a document confirming that one is vaccinated, which then entitles the person to enter into a mall, a restaurant, or use public transport. In reality, none of these vaccines are effective, as the virus has already mutated 3 to 4 times from its original form, and many are still dying although vaccinated. Therefore, does it not bring to mind that the populations are being forced into a system of government control like Smyrna, where one does not have the freedom to choose to get vaccinated or not, but has to fit into a government narrative which does not make sense to the simplest of minds? It's called mass programming. And these are the very first steps towards the creation of a herd of humans, which will eventually be controlled by artificial intelligence. And these are just the dry runs that are being carried out before the final solution will be implemented, the mark of the beast of Revelation 13:16. The next is the analysis of the balanced part of the statement made by the Lord himself. I know the slander of those who say they are Jews and are not, but are of the synagogue of Satan. There are two factors that we must analyze here. The first, this group presents themselves as believers, but their beliefs and actions clearly prove that they belong to a different assembly, a synagogue. Now, when you would hear this word synagogue, automatically you would think of Jews. Now, this is the work really of King James because he hated the Jews. But the word synagogue is a Greek word called synagoge, which is a word for assembly, like ecclesia or kahilia in the Hebrew. But what he's saying is, or what the Lord is saying here, is that there are those who claim to be Jews, but they are an assembly of Satan. Nothing else. They are totally satanic in their thinking, and their actions clearly prove that they belong to a different assembly altogether. It is my opinion that these are the replacement theologists of today. They that control the key theological institutes as well as the larger churches, and their actions are very anti-Israeli. To me, brothers and sisters, Yeshua was a Jew from the tribe of Judah. The opening lines of Matthew chapter 1 verse 1 clearly proves it. It says Yeshua ben David ben Abraham. Jesus, or Yeshua, the son of David, the son of Abraham. Right? And to me, there's nothing more Jewish than the Gospel of Matthew, clearly proving who he was, the King of the Jews. It concerns me that these very religious folk, who have even PhDs, do not want to accept the truth in the Word, thus labeling God as a liar. Be sure they too will face his righteous judgment. Let's look at admonition. Do not be afraid of what you are about to suffer. I tell you, the devil will put some of you in prison to test you, and you will suffer persecution for 10 days. Now, this is a passage that has really troubled a lot of people. But historically, when you analyze this, we know that the 10 days in reference is to 10 reigns of 10 Roman Caesars, covering a period of 250 years that persecuted the Christians for their faith. The call, be faithful even to the point of death, and I will give you the crown of life. Brothers and sisters, there's no promise of deliverance in this situation, but only a reward in heaven. Just because we go through persecution, I, for an individual, have faced much persecution. My job was threatened 3 times. I was even given a written memorandum to say that I would be dismissed from my position for preaching the gospel to people. The Lord himself said, in this world you will have tribulation or persecution. But then he goes on to encourage us, and he says, but behold, I have overcome the world. The stories of believers' grace in the face of death, while ingenious and their diabolical methods were employed to exterminate them as a form of public entertainment, and have achieved legendary status. For example, the Colosseum was specifically built to persecute Christians. Today, we are still a persecuted group. We're even persecuted by the biggest organization that stems out of Rome, called the Roman Catholic Church. So this will go on, brothers and sisters, right up till the hapazo in Hebrew, or the word that is most commonly used, hapazo, is in Greek, nekatef is in Hebrew, and we take the Latin variation of it called the rapture, which comes from the Latin word repimere. The challenge: he who has an ear, let him hear what the Spirit says to the churches. Many of us today have never faced the serious threats, especially those who are in the West, for our faith. But the worldwide number of Christian martyrs have averaged from 100,000 to 150,000 per year over the last 10 years. Their number will keep growing as we end this age towards the rapture. The promise, he who overcomes will not be hurt at all by the second death. This is such an important statement. The old adage goes, born once, die twice. Born twice, die once. It's the second death that you have to watch out for, because it's a permanent one. Today, A prosperous city called Izmir, the third largest in Turkey, stands where ancient Smyrna was. An incident that clearly displayed the Lord's sense of humor while emphasizing the point of his letter. There's no trace of Smyrna today. The church of Smyrna, brothers and sisters, is in heaven. So let me conclude with a personal thought from me to you. Every time I get a retrospective picture of my second life, that is from the age of 40, when I gave my life to Yeshua Messiah, is this: how can a righteous God, pure and holy, accept a sinner like me? I always saw myself as a piece of wood with white bristles at the top. But the Lord says to those such as myself, that piece of wood that you think of yourself is a handle, and the bristles at the top make it a brush. This brush in the hands of the master creates what the spirit of the future painting is to be. That is called a masterpiece. You plus God, brothers and sisters, will paint a masterpiece until we meet him in the rapture. This ends the teaching of the church of Smyrna, which is the second church, and it is my prayer that this teaching blesses you. Shalom, and may the Lord bless you.